Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Okay, now here we have basically concluded the job, right, which is the main job that we want to use actually. All right, now we have to now extend this particular job for each of the services. So for front end, for products, and for shopping carts, right? So we need to extend this particular job, all right, for each of these services. We have to build each of the services. So if you come here to the front end, you can see the Docker file right here. So here we're using more like the latest version of the node as the base image. And then here we are, of course, setting our work directory, okay, to this particular location inside of that image. And then inside of the image, we're copying the package JSON that we have here into that image. And the first thing that we're doing is to do npm, all right, install. Right. So, and then after that, we basically have to copy the index.html and the server.js right inside of the same, all right, work directory. Right. And then here we are exposing, all right, the products and services, all right, using this name. And then we're also exporting the shopping cart service, all right, using this name, because the front end application has to connect to the product, all right, and to the shopping cart. Okay, so we need to export, all right, or basically, make available, all right, these particular values, all right, as environment, all right, variable. Okay, and if you look at the product as well, if you look at the server.js, all right, if you look at, if you look at the server.js for the front end application, we're basically, all right, as we've configured that here as well. So product service, all right, shopping cart service, all right, we've configured that here as well also. Right? So if you look at here, basically it is what we are exporting here that we are referencing here as well. Okay, because the assumption is that all of the applications, both the front end, the product, the shopping cart will be all right in the same network, okay, and then the front end will be able to connect to them, all right, using this particular name, and that is exactly, all right, what we're exporting out, right? And this right here is going to be the name, all right, of the containers. So by the time Docker Compose, all right, will do its thing, this is going to be the name, all right, of the containers, and that is what we are, all right, putting out right here, because your product, all right, service will have to connect to these other services using their container names, all right, to connect, all right, to them. So that's why we're putting the name here as well. So by the time we start up the Docker Compose, the Docker Compose is going to be starting up using this particular name. We're going to see that in the pipeline configuration as we go on, all right, as well. So I just thought to explain these things to us. So for the product, you can also see here, the Docker file as well, similar to what we have here, what we have for the front end. Basically the port here is 3001. For the front end, the port is 30,000. And the front end is the only, all right, service that we're going to be have to access through the browser, because the product and the shopping cart, all right, are basically just going to give us some kind of JSON data, right, which we're going to see through the front end, all right, service. So the shopping cart also, you can also see a similar thing as well, but the port here also is 30,000, all right, and 3002 basically, okay? So here we need to build, all right, the services. We need to build the services. So we need to extend this particular thing, all right, this particular job here has to be extended. And we, of course, have an idea already how to do that exactly, all right, from the last, from the previous videos that we have, looked at, or the project that we've looked at together already. So here, I'm going to come in and say, I'm building the front end, all right, that's the first thing I'm doing. So building front end. Okay. So build underscore front end, and then I'll put my stuff here. And of course, the first thing you want to do is to say extends. All right. So what are you extending? You're extending dot build, right? So that is what we are extending actually. And then here we have a variable, right? And we have to pass the value for this variable. So the variable here is microservice. So let's grab that variable. All right. So grab the variable. Okay. And then you bring it here. And then of course you assign a name to it. So the variable here will be what? Will be front end. Like I told us in the last, all right, video, that the name must correspond to the name of the folder. All right, because if you look at what you have here, you are basically doing CD, all right, into the microservice. So if the name does not correspond to the name of the folder, then it's going to drop an error, because it's not going to find any folder, all right, with that name. So the name has to correspond to the name of the folder. So take note, all right, of that. So that is front end, all right, and that is basically all that we have to do. As simple as that. So here, I'm going to come back here again, sorry, copy this one. All right, let's just duplicate that, all right, in 3 different places. Okay, Control V here, all right, and then you can come back here to just change this name. So this one will be what? Will be product, right? So that'll be products. And then the name of the microservice is also going to be product. I mean, it has to correspond to the name of the, all right, folder. So products. Okay, so that is what we're doing, product. And then we can copy this again, all right, and paste that. So Control C and then Control V. Okay, and that is going to now be shopping cart, right? So shopping, all right, shopping-cart. Okay, so take note of that. It is not shopping_cart, it is shopping-cart, right? So paste that here and we're good to go. All right, so the job is going to build, all right, I mean, build front end, build product, and build, all right, shopping cart right here. So let's push this and let's see what actually happens, all right, exactly. So let's see how this would go. If we are able to, get this, then we go over to the deploy session and deploy to our server, okay? So let's go ahead and push this, all right, to the repo. So let's go outside of here, and then we're going to say git add, all right, and then git commit, all right, -m. So we're just basically going to say here that the build, all right, job, okay, let's say the build job, all right, is, let's just say completed, right? And then we do git push, okay? So let's push into that repo. And of course, the pipeline is going to be triggered, and we can also monitor that right here. I mean, now we have the GitLab CI. So let's go over here to basically just monitor what is going on. So build pipelines, and let's see what is actually going on, right? Okay, so now take a look at this. All right, interesting. So I love what I'm seeing here. Now, if you look at what you have here, it says pending and it says stock, right? I mean, it's going to build all of the 3 jobs in parallel. But here it is stock. Now, why is it stock? Because we have not configured a runner for this particular project, right? In the last class, all right, we had a runner that we deployed on our instance, right? This is the GitLab runner. I've actually started it, but I have not activated that runner for this particular job. Okay, so that's why it says here stock, because I mean, inside of my configuration, I'll basically specify that I'm using the Docker, all right, runner, and of course that Docker runner has not been made available for this particular job or this project actually. So what can I do? I can actually come here to settings, CICD, and then here I will come here to runner, expand that, and I can see that the runner is actually available, but it is not enabled, okay, for this particular project. So what do? I basically say enable for this, all right, project. So that's what I just have to do, right? And then it's enable for the project. And then if I go back to build and I go to pipeline, my pipeline should now, all right, be started. So let's take a look and let's see if that will work. So now it is no longer stock, it is pending and ready to execute. So let's wait and let's see what happens, all right, exactly. Of course, this is going to build in parallel. So I want us to see what will happen with this job that we're trying to build, all right, in parallel. So let's take a look at what actually happens. All right, so let's just wait and let's see what happens here. So I can pause my screen and then I'll come back when all this is done. Now you can see here that the 3 jobs have actually been built. But of course, it took a little while, all right, before the 3 jobs actually completed, right? I mean, it was started 6 minutes ago, and that was because, it was stuck for a while. And then after some time, we had to go and enable, all right, the runner for this particular project. And then before it, got out of that, situation, and then the job actually now started, right? I mean, when you are building, all right, any job in the same stage, of course, to start, for the first one, the second one, and then of course, the last one. So we can see that the job actually built successfully. Okay, I mean, that's a good one right there. So if I click on the build front end, let's just see what happened, all right, behind the scene. So here, okay, so we can see everything that actually happened. So CD into microservice, right? So that actually worked. And then, of course, we were able to install the JQ that will help us to read the version file, all right? And then right here, we can see that it says docker build-t, All right, and if you scroll all the way down, of course, the npm install and everything was executed right inside of that. And if you look at what you have right here, the index.html was copied, all right, and then we pushed basically to the front end, right? You can see that. So that's the name. I mean, we did, all right, microservice a variable. So that is, to the front end particular stuff. So here you can see the name of the image 1.0f.1. So the first pipeline that we executed actually, right? And then of course, if you go to the products, you will basically see the same thing as well. All right, and then you can see 1.0p.1. All right, and then of course you can see the product name right here, all right, showing up. And then for the shopping cart, you will basically also see, all right, the same thing as well. So this is 1.0s.1, and then you can see the name right here as what? As shopping cart. All right, so if I go here to deploy and I come here to container registry, all right, I can see, all right, the three, all right, containers here, right? So for the front end, I can see that, and I can see the tag, all right? I mean, that's exactly what we want, right? So if I click on the product also, I can also see the tag right here. And if I come here to the shopping cart, I can also see the tag, all right here, all right, as well. So that actually worked, okay? But the only thing is that, of course, it took a little while for the project to actually, all right, respond. And that is really understandable, okay? So now we have the images, all right, in the GitLab container registry. The next thing we need to do now is to basically deploy, all right, these images to our environment and basically see how, that will go. So the next thing we need to do, of course, is to create another deploy job, right? Basically, we're going to do the same thing like we did for the build. All right. So basically that's, that's the same thing we have to do. So we have to come here, all right, and basically just say deploy, all right, and then we start the same thing as well. So here we can configure the stage. So the stage is deploy, all right. I mean, we configured the stage already earlier. Sorry, the stage is deploy. All right, and then the tags, of course, we're also going to be deploying using Docker, all right, runner. So Docker, okay. And then here we need to also configure some variables as well, right? So let's see how far we can go here. So variables, all right. So let's configure some variables here. And we're also going to be needing this microservice variable, okay? So let's copy that microservice variable. All right, copy that, drop that here. All right, don't forget to open up your two apostrophe like this. And then we need to configure the application port. So we're going to say app_port. All right, so we need to configure that also. So we need to configure these two variables, right? And then the next thing we need to do, of course, is to configure the before script. All right. So what are the before scripts that we actually, all right, need? Okay. So we need to export some things as well. So I'm gonna bring this down a bit. And under that before script, I think we're going to be needing some of the things that we have here. For example, we need to also export these registry. All right, so we need to export this. So I'm going to just copy this two like this. Okay, so we need to export those two things. Okay, so I'm going to come here. All right, and then let's drop those things right here. All right, so let's, oops. So we need to export the version or basically the image name. So let's start with the image name. So let me put that on top. All right. So export image name. And of course, this is the name of the image that we're exporting. And then we're exporting, versions, right? So how do we export the version? Now, this is not going to work. So we can export the version using something like this. So we can come here and then copy what we have here. All right. So let's copy this one. Let's copy that one, but I don't think that is going to work, right? So let's come back here. So I'm going to export the version like this. So I'm going to say export version, and then I'm going to just use the cat, right? So cat, and then I'm going to say micro_service, all right, and then /version.txt, okay? So basically, I'm just using what I have here. I mean, I've exported it out and I've stored it as an artifact already. So all I need to do is just to reference this particular artifact that is available, all right, within the pipeline. I mean, everybody can reference that artifact, and that is the purpose of using artifact, all right, in this particular case. Right, so this is exactly what I need to do, right? Export version, and then I'm basically just cutting, all right, what I have exported already. And then here we can also do something, right? Additional stuff. And then we can say export, all right, image, all right, tag, because we're going to be using the version to tag, all right, the image actually. All right, so you need to do that. So export version tag, and then we're going to come here and then say that is equal to version, right? Okay, and of course, the last thing we need to do here, we need to echo, all right, that particular image tag. So image underscore tag. I mean, we need to echo it to make it available within our job, all right, environment. Because I mean, the image tag is basically getting the value from here. And so echo is basically to just, print it out on the screen for us, right? Because we really want to find out if, all right, whatever this version is giving us, we want to find out if we are actually, all right, if that version is actually being passed inside of this image tag, right? And that is the purpose of the echo, all right, command, to basically just give us, if the version is actually, being taken up, all right, by this particular image. I mean, this is a variable, right? So whatever value that this is holding, we want that value to be assigned to the image tag. So the echo command is basically going to help us to find out, all right, if actually the value here is actually being imported into this image tag. All right, that is exactly what we want to see, all right, before we decide on things. And of course, before we assume that the version value is actually being imported into the image tag, all right, variable. So that is exactly what we want to try to find out. And let's actually test that and see if, this thing is, all right, giving us what it should give us, all right, exactly. So let's quickly test that out. All right, so let's commit that. All right, and say basically testing, all right, image tag, right? So let's do that. And then let's push, okay, to the repo. And let's see. All right, oops, that is not going to work, guys. I mean, that is not going to work, right? So why do you think that's not going to work? I mean, that's not going to work. So I'm just going to cancel, all right, the pipeline. So let's stop the pipeline, all right, from running. Now, why do you think that's not going to work? Because, I mean, this is, all right, an eating job. So the GitLab pipeline is not going to see this. All right, it's not going to see that because, I mean, it's an eating job. So until we extend that, we cannot, all right, make use of this particular job, right? So whatever it is that we're doing here, we have to wait until, all right, we have actually extended it to find out if the version value is actually being imported into, all right, the variable image tag, okay? So we need to wait until we can achieve that, all right, as well. Now here, the next thing we need to also do is to do, all right, the chmod, because now we are going to be connecting to the server, right? So chmod 400, and then we need to do that on the ssh underscore private underscore key. All right, so we're going to do that. Now, the SH key has not been configured yet because, I mean, we're dealing with a new project, right? So this is a new project entirely. If I come to settings and I come to CICD and I come here to variables, I will see here that I don't have any variables already configured. So that means I need to copy my SSH key, all right, from the previous project and then make that available, all right, for this particular, project, okay? So what I can do is I can come here, all right, and go to that particular project, okay, and then I can come to settings, I can click on CICD, and then I can come here, all right, to variables, and here is my key, so I can try to open that up, and right here I can actually just copy, all right, the key that I have here. So Control C to copy, and then I can cancel that, okay, and then go back to the other project, this one. All right, click on that, and then I can come to settings, CICD, all right, and then I can come back here to variables, okay, and then I can say add variable, all right, this is going to be a file variable, all right, and of course I can uncheck this one, and I can actually put the value right here, and of course the name is going to be, all right, SSH key, so I can copy that name from here, copy that, all right, and then I can drop the key here, and then I can say add, all right, variable, right? So the variable has been added. Okay, so now I can make use of it, all right, within my pipeline, and that is exactly what I've configured, all right, here. So the next thing we need to do now is to basically configure, all right, the script now. So what are the scripts, that we want to run? So of course, the first script we need to run, of course, is to copy the Docker file, right? That is, the first thing that we need to execute. So I can copy that from here. Just to make things a little easy. So I can just grab this, all right? Of course, we're going to change some things, but of course, that would make it a lot easier for us. So just copy that and then just do a little modification. So SCP copy, all right, and then SH private key. So we're copying the Docker Compose YAML file. All right, and the username is still Ubuntu. We're still dealing with an Ubuntu machine here, so we've not changed, all right, the server. And of course, the IP this time around is going to be the server IP. Let me check the variable we used here. So it's going to be what? Server IP, right? So I'm going to scroll down, and of course, we need to make that change. So it's going to be server, all right, IP. So that's the only thing that I think we need to change. The path still remains the same because we're copying the Docker Compose, all right, into that particular location. So it still remains, all right, the same location, all right, as well. So the next thing we need to do is to now SSH, all right, into the instance, right, our deployment, instance. We need to SSH into that. So I'm going to say SSH, all right, -O. And then here, I'm going to also just copy this, right? This street host key check-in equals to no. I'm going to just copy that and put it here. And then I'm going to say -I. And of course, it's still the same thing. So I can just copy this guy right here. Okay. So I can copy that. All right. And then I can connect to my Ubuntu, all right, server. So I'm going to copy this. Okay. All right. So copy that and then put that here. And of course, we're connecting to the server, but there are actually some things we want to execute on that server, right? So I'm going to come here and open this up like this. All right. And the thing that I want to do now is to basically, first of all, we need to authenticate, right, with the container registry. That's the first thing that we have to do, right? You have to authenticate with the container registry because you're going to be pulling your Docker images from the container registry. So of course, and before you can pull an image, all right, from a private registry like the GitLab container registry, we need to authenticate, all right, into that particular repository. So what I'm going to do basically is I'm just going to copy this particular line here. All these things are basically the same, so we can just reuse, all right, some of those logic that we have there. So I'm going to copy that and paste that here. All right, so that will be echo. Of course, you don't need this. You don't need to put this because this command is actually going to be executed under the SSH, right? Because the SSH is actually more like you are doing what you call, more like you're connecting to your instance, through the CLI, and then you are now executing some commands, all right, on your instance. That is what this is. So here, I'm going to come here, enter, right? And then here, we can now start configuring the next thing that we need, all right, to configure. Now, don't forget something. So don't forget to, all right, put this here, all right, the double ampersand, which means, the command still continues, all right? Don't let us forget that, all right, as well. Okay, so now we need to also basically do something similar, all right, to what we did for other project as well. But here we're going to do some stuff, right? So here, I'm basically just going to move a bit in. And then because we need to do some kind of export, right? And we need to also give the Docker container, all right, a name, all right? By the time the compose, starts all of the services, we want the compose to start all of the services using the name of each of the service, which we have parameterized as micro, all right, service. So here we're going to say export, all right, compose underscore project, all right, underscore name. So basically the name of the Docker Compose project, and that'll be equal, all right, to micro, all right, service. Remember, we parameterized that already, right? So we have to do that. So the next one here will now be to do some kind of export in terms of the Docker image name, the Docker Compose image name, the Docker Compose tag, and of course, the app port, all right, as well. So here, I can actually grab that also from here. It's here already. So I can just grab whatever it is that I have here. all right, copy that and then make that available right here like this. So I can just tap them in, and then here I have my DC image name, all right, is equal, all right, to the CI registry image, right? So let's see that, all right, let's see what we have there. So we already have the image name right here, parameterized. So we need to copy that, and we need to change that, all right, to the correct, all right, value, okay, because I mean we're dealing with microservice now, remember, okay, so we need to put that right here. I mean, we already configured the image name to be equal to the CI registry / the name of the microservice, so we need to change that here, all right, to the correct thing. And so here the image tag is going to be, what's going to be the image tag? So the image tag is basically just going to be image tag, all right, as well. So because, I mean, we've passed the value of version, all right, into the image tag, all right, variable. So we can just use that also. So we don't need to use the version, all right, like what we have here. So we just have to change that also, all right, like this. Now, again, the next thing here is to say the app port. So we're parameterizing the app port as well. Okay, so we have to, all right, take note of all of that. Now, the next thing we need to do, remember, I said to us that, we have to configure our microservice to basically communicate on the same network, right? They have to be in the same network. We can't afford to have each of the service, all right, connected to their own different networks. So both the front end, the product, and the shopping cart, all right, they have to be, all right, on the same network, all right, actually. So what we need to do is to say Docker, all right, network, okay, and then we say create. Okay, so we want to create a network called micro_service, micro_service. So that's the network we want to create. Now, here, if we leave this command like this, it is going to try to create this network every time we run the pipeline, right? So what can we do? We can use the pipe symbol and then do something like this to say that if this network has been created already, right, all right, and it is true, then basically just ignore, right? Which means don't recreate every time. I mean, every time the pipeline is executed, right, and then the microservice network has been created already, then simply what? Simply ignore. All right, that is exactly what we want to do. So here, I'm going to go down again here, and now we can now put, all right, the logic here, all right, and say, all right, Docker compose down, all right, like we did earlier. So Docker compose down, I can just drop this down a bit to make it a bit neater. So Docker compose down, okay, and then don't forget your ampersand. I mean, the command still continues. And then here we say Docker compose, all right, up, and then -d, all right, and that basically will be the end, all right, of the whole configuration. And then now we can also configure environment, right? Because I mean, we want to just go to the environment section, click on environment, and then that will take us, all right, to where our application actually is, right? So here, I'm going to come here, and then we need to configure, all right, environment right here. So I'm going to say environment, and then here, so the name of the environment is basically just going to be, let's just say front end, right? So let's just call it front end, or we can also parameterize that, remember? So we can say the name of the environment is, if we use microservice, is that going to give us what we want? I don't think so. So let's just put the name here. So it's front end, all right? Let's add code that. And then here we're going to say the URL is basically, that can be the app, all right, underscore endpoint. Okay, so that can be the application, all right, endpoint. I mean, we have just a single endpoint. I mean, we don't have double, all right, or 2 or 3 endpoint. We have just a single, all right, endpoint that we want to deploy to. Okay, so that is basically this. So the next thing we need to do now is to expand, all right, or to extend this particular, all right, job that we have right here. So that's the next thing that we need to do. All right, and in the next video, that is exactly, all right, what we're going to do. So thank you so much, guys. I will see you, all right, in the next video.